Hey, everybody. This is Bob, and I'm talking to Mike Boody, your Midnight Citizen. I'll throw this up already, Mike's Bonfire, which I think is a very inspired name,
Oh yeah,
actually. I love whenever I saw that, I was like, that is darn interesting. I
it's
don't know
probably about
why.
to
I mean,
change.
why wouldn't know? I mean, but I'm like, yeah, I can see that. No, having some knowledge of you and your style,
Hmm.
definitely.
Yeah.
If it's fitting. What do
Um,
you think? Where'd you come up? Why'd you come up with that?
well, I'm gonna preface it with like saying that all branding is probably about to change. Because I've been doing the podcast, like I've had that name now for 15 years, and I did a show recently where I
Yeah,
gave some,
just keep it.
I gave the origin of it, and I think like I've moved past it. I'm sort of ready to try something else out, to try
So you'll
a new name.
be the
Mhm.
podcast formerly known as the Midnight Citizen.
Yeah, no, I'm thinking of like just doing a little symbol and all
Yeah,
that, and coming up with a very specific name to pronounce the symbol, like
yeah.
apparently like a duck sound or something. Um, but yeah, and Mike's Bonfire was created completely separate of the podcast. It was a place to like a Substack that I created to do more writing and all
Hmm.
that, but I have not done much writing consistently at all over there, so it's just become the podcast. And so now I feel like it's just confusing to people that I got to go to Mike's Bonfire and then I watch the Midnight Citizen and like what else, what other kind of branding is he going to throw at me? So yeah,
Well,
it's
but
one of those
it's
things that
all
I constantly
good.
feel anxiety about, is just like having, everything is just so different. And I do think about static radio kind of constantly, because you guys have had the
Why?
same name since you've had the same name since 1999. Is that right?
Yeah, and
So
I wish I would have changed it
it's a
10 years ago.
fantastic name, and I
Yeah.
know, and it's like I've gotten some feedback from people in like the last few weeks since I've talked about changing it, and
Uh-huh.
people are like, feel free to do that, but like I'm fine with what you've got. It doesn't bother me at all. So,
Yeah, I think it's. I mean, either one of them are good. I do really do like Mike's
yeah,
Bonfire. It's not
yeah.
a typical naming convention,
Hmm.
and but
Yeah.
it totally fits the persona.
Yeah, initially it was like the bonfire aspect was, like when you create a Substack, you're supposed to have like an introductory post that just introduces
Hmm.
yourself to like, readers. And my idea of like the bonfire was like I was trying to write at the time like a serialized novel, and I'd gotten about
Hmm.
like 20 pages through the first chapter. And my idea was to put it out there, and so to emulate what Tom Wolfe had done with the Bonfire of the Vanities, where he had
Right.
serialized that novel in Rolling Stone in the 80s. And
Hmm.
so that was like my idea, was like, this is like my bonfire. So that was kind of the thing. And it just sounded like kind of a cool name, but it to me, to be honest with you, it sounds like also like kind of pervy, to be honest. Like it sounds like I'm like a weird
Well, now that
scoutmaster
you
or
mention it,
something,
all of a sudden,
yeah.
I didn't think that at first.
Come on over to Mike's Bonfire and bring your Slim Jims, and we'll,
Oh my goodness.
So
I did not get that vibe at all.
yeah, I
I
think like I have that general anxiety that like, just anything I create is any name that I come up with has like some kind of a weird, like S&M connotation. Like the Midnight Citizen sounds like well, for one, I initially, like right after I came up with that name and put it out there years ago, I
Mhm.
sort of thought that like that sounds like an underground like right-wing militia group. And
I think you're reading way too much into it.
that's just me. I don't know. It's like
Yeah.
I doubt everything that I do. So,
Yeah. No,
yeah.
I just the midnight it sounds because there was a thing called Midnight Caller,
Mhm. Yeah.
It was Eric Bogosian was the actor, right? Didn't he do Midnight
Oh,
Caller, or was that somebody else?
well,
Anyway,
Talk Radio, yeah,
talk
was
radio,
his big movie. Yeah,
exactly.
that was his
Yes,
play that he turned into a movie and all that.
yeah, and so it
Yeah,
reminds me of that. I mean, you're the Midnight
yeah,
Citizen. You're up all night. You're talking
yeah,
about what's happening.
yeah,
You're
yeah,
keeping people on the straight and narrow and telling them, what's happening in the
yeah,
world.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, Talk Radio was like obviously, yeah, like when I created the show, it was like watching that movie a lot as well as Pump Up the Volume.
Yeah,
And I just was really just so incredibly sad that a lot of that was going away. Was
yeah. Well,
just
no,
the
it's actually exploded. That's what we're
it
doing right
has.
now.
I know, and I was thinking about that at the time where it's like, podcast, like I had been thinking about, like, when podcasting came around, which was 6 years before that, it was around
Mhm,
2004. That was like a really exciting thing, and getting like my first like getting the iPod and everything, and being able to
mhm,
just for specifically for podcasts, I was like, this is fantastic because it's like taking this like talk radio. Uh,
mhm,
I mean, talk radio obviously still exists, but if you weren't, Howard Stern, or at the time, like Air America,
mhm,
had things, you were like, it, you had to be like Rush Limbaugh, you had to be like some kind of like, you know, loudmouth conservative, to be on talk radio anymore. And just the audience had gotten so incredibly, like, it made me really sad. Like, I was very young, I was only like 23 or so, but when podcasting came out, but it made me very happy to see like this medium suddenly like come out of nowhere, where like anybody could suddenly do something like that.
mhm.
It was really cool, but obviously like my interest in it died down because like the dream sort of died very quickly. Like after it was introduced to the world, like people just started figuring out that, like, oh, since everybody can do it, then there's like it's harder to kind of break through, and it's like becoming oversaturated,
Mhm.
everything. And then eventually, when podcasting made a big comeback, like when Welcome to Night Vale came out, and like um that show Serial came out,
Right,
it
yeah.
was like, great, everybody loves podcasting again, but it's not like the podcasting that like I liked, and that I was really interested in. I'm not interested in like these heavily produced radio stories that might as well just be on public radio.
Right. Yeah.
And that's really around the time that I found the Overnightscape. And I would, and I found the Overnightscape underground, and met all you guys who were like sort of doing the exact same thing that it should have been all along. So it made me frustrated because it's like all these years I could have been hearing you guys, I could have been hearing Frank. It was a little frustrating. Sort of like, what you hear people say, like after they, like when they get clean or something off of drugs and alcohol, like all these years I could have been living this like fantastic clean life.
Oh my gosh, I'm finally sober.
I know.
Yeah.
Look at all that I've been missing out on. I know.
Oh my gosh, the world's changed.
Mm-hmm.
No, well,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, well, at this point, I mean, it's been 21 years now, so
Yeah.
you can romanticize about it a little bit,
Mm-hmm.
having that much time pass.
Right.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, it it was cool. I mean, you didn't make any money, but whatever.
Yeah.
Not that
Yeah.
you have to. It's art.
Well, again, I mean, you still aren't really making any money, but like
No,
the idea is that there is so much money out there to be made in podcasting. Um,
by
but
people selling things to podcasters. That's
but
where the
again,
money
it's
is.
the money, the money. It's become like a pyramid scheme.
Yeah, totally.
And my thinking on it is just like, let those people flush themselves out of it.
Right.
And uh, like my friend, who last summer, he works for a production studio in town,
Hmm.
and I was helping him. They wanted to get into the podcasting space, like have
Hmm.
like create a studio that they could then rent out to local podcasters. Um,
Sure.
And so I went down there and kind of helped them set it up, and they've been doing really well. They've got people coming in, but like uh they find that they have like a client come in, record one podcast, maybe two podcasts, and they just drop off after that because it just is not the
Right.
money maker that they think it's going to be.
Right.
It's like really it's like everybody just kind of does it because it's like what you're supposed to do to get your name out there. And
Yeah.
so anyway, but,
It's like social media in a
Mhm.
sense where it's like, yeah, I have to have all these social handles so that I can
Yeah.
be out in the space. And it's like,
Yeah. Yeah.
it's, yeah, there's, what was it? I mean, it's like 3 million or something podcasts now, but apparently the real number, I'm told, at least from a little bit of
Mhm.
research and other people who have done research, is the reality is it's about 100 and less than 150,000 that actually produce anything with any regularity.
Like daily active users. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, no, I mean, not
And
even daily production, but I'm just saying that they have some type of schedule that they've been sticking
right.
to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
People just consistently come back to. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
apparently, I mean, everybody loves to throw around statistics. I mean,
Mhm.
if,
Yeah.
statistics are are one of the things that everybody buys into, but the reality is everybody makes them up. And so it's like, why? How can we be consistently tricked by all these statistics? But we are, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
it's the self-fulfilling prophecy of the mathematical world.
Mhm.
You just, I can find a statistic that tells me whatever I want.
Oh yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah.
it's just really kind of sad
Yeah.
in a lot of ways, but you
Yeah.
have to do it because you enjoy it, and obviously, I
Mhm.
think you do.
Yeah. I think
Maybe
so.
I'm
I think I
wrong.
do. It gives me a lot of yeah, no, it's one of those things that I do go like long stretches at this point. I'm just thinking of like, well, I have seasons. I don't have like a consistent episode schedule.
Right,
Right
right.
now, I consider myself, I guess I'm like, technically 15 years, but I did take like 3 years off
Mhm.
when I was like teaching like all the time and didn't have any time at all for this.
Right, no free time.
But like right now I just consider myself, I'm like in my 13th season, I
There you
guess.
go.
I'm like right there where the Simpsons kind of started going downhill a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I always joke about the seasons. That's my joke. I always
Yeah.
ask people, what do
Yeah.
you consider a season? Because
Mm,
there's no consistency. So
mhm,
a season for I don't even, maybe in old time radio they had seasons, but I always think of television, and the season was basically from September to May,
mhm.
and that was a season, right?
Right.
And
22
so
episodes or something.
yeah,
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
sometimes a 44.
Mhm.
But that was a season. So now, I mean, in this world, a season is whatever you make of it.
Right.
And I was making fun of the seasons, and I was doing a recording with these comedian people, and I joked throughout the whole show that I had just entered my, next season.
Yeah.
And by the time we got to the end of it, I said, "Wow, we went through 3 seasons in just one show." And because it gets kind of ridiculous.
Yeah.
Everybody, I consider us, if we had to give ourselves a season, it would be a year, and that
Yeah.
would be about 52 shows.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah, see, my aspiration, where I want to get to with my podcast, my ultimate goal is to get to a point where I can actually tell my audience that I'm not going to do a show next week or the week after that, and I can
mhm.
give them a set date for when I'm going to start doing shows. Because the way that I do it is I just stop. I mean, I just completely ghost my audience, and I just like no. And the thing about it is, you feel bad about it, like that first week when you're like, I can't do a show tonight. I just don't feel like doing it,
Uh-huh.
and nobody notices.
No one sends you a note,
That's the worst
not
thing.
even a note.
And then you go from just feeling bad that you're not giving your audience something to suddenly feeling mad that like nobody cared,
Bastards
and
didn't even pay attention.
yeah, I
They don't
know,
know.
so it's this thing. And uh I don't know, I mean, like right now, the thing that I am really enjoying, just doing a show every week. And in the past, I've really put like a lot of weight on myself to do one every week. And
Mhm.
what I'm finding is the fact that like just reframing it to think about like this is the easiest thing you really have to do all week. You know that, right?
Well, I was thinking actually because I know you're write and you're a writer. I
Yeah.
mean, isn't this in a way
Hmm.
kind of formulating your writing in a way? I mean, it's just in a different
Yeah.
format, and you
Yeah.
could, and now with AI and everything, you could literally get it transcribed toot sweet when you're done,
Yeah.
and now you have something. I mean, you could edit it,
Yeah.
and now you've got something written. I mean, to
Yeah. I
me,
mean,
that's kind of the way things are going. And it would be interesting to utilize it that way.
yeah, there's something to be said about that. I think like there's definitely like some shows that I've done where it's like, you know, the way that I normally do shows is I usually like open up with some kind of like a monologue first that sort
Mhm.
of like I try to, you know, like tell a story or kind of get to like a theme or something that I'm thinking about that week. And it'll usually be like about 25 minutes or so.
Mhm.
And I don't go into those thinking that like these would be really great stories to actually develop as like in the written word. But
Mhm.
then there are some that I just did one this past week where afterwards I was like that really should be a story. That should be like actually something that I write down and
Mhm.
develop. And because again, like, you know, just the big inspiration, you know, for my show, and this is how I found Frank's show as well, was Gene Shepard,
Right.
who in the 1960s and 70s, you know, would do a lot of that. He would adapt a lot of his written word for radio as
Mhm.
monologues, and then he would do monologues, and then later on adapt them into writing. And so I always thought about that, is that there's a lot of, you know, cool stuff. Like one thing I was thinking about doing was like just kind of starting a collection of just like jobs stories, you know, because like a lot of my stories are
Right.
related to just like working, you know, just like I've worked a million jobs in the, you know, however long it's been, you know, 30 years that I've been in the workforce. And, you know, and just like, you know, like, so, you know, and there's nothing like spectacular in them at all. There's nothing like really amazing that I did in these jobs, but there are like really kind of like interesting little moments that I pull if I just kind of like mine my memory enough that
Mhm.
it's like, that's a pretty unique thing that I did there. But, anyway, but yeah, you're right. And it is true. It's like, you know, in a way, it's like, if you just tell the story, you could have a transcription and you could just like
Mhm.
edit it and everything like that. I don't know if I would go that far as to like, you know, be that, you know, as to, you know, use AI in that fashion. Like uh, you know, right now, like a lot of the things that I'm consumed with thinking about like all the time are like the ethics of like, you know, how we use AI, you know,
Mhm.
and so I like the idea that like the transcription's there, and I may take that transcription and put it into like Chat GPT and ask me to like write kind of a summary or sort of like generate some key points from it.
Mhm.
But in terms of like just writing the actual story from like soup to nuts would really have to be like something that I sit down and just, you know, do completely from scratch. So
You wouldn't want to you would because I mean
mhm,
you're
mhm.
it's almost as if you're workshopping the story whenever you're talking,
Yeah,
right?
I think that,
So
yeah, that's the thing, same thing. It's like, again, it's like a lot of the I have like a lot of admiration for stand-up comedians, even though I wouldn't want to do that because, you know, they tell like one joke or one story and they have to like
mhm.
do the same thing every single night. But like
Well,
one
you
of
don't
the
have to.
no, they don't. No, I'm not like stand-up comedians. Like, I mean, they hone those jokes, you know, over time.
Right,
Like,
right.
there's a lot of great stand-up comics who, you know, can come on and basically do a different show every single night, but they're few and far between. You know,
Mhm.
like most stand-up comics get up there and they like just night after night take the same exact jokes and just like punch them to like perfection.
Right.
Um, and I have like a lot of envy for that, even though I wouldn't want to do it. It's like when you're sort of doing a podcast, you know, like one podcast a week, you don't want to like tell the same story every single week, even though like at the end of like every podcast that I do, I always sort of think about the fact that like there's something so great that I discovered while I was telling that story that I wish I could have known before I started telling it. And
Right.
that's like where the writing aspect would come in for me, because it's like I can't go in and record that again. I can't. I don't have time to record a whole show knowing now what I wish I knew. So
Yeah.
so I like had that ability to sort of hone it and to kind of shape it into something and fully form it before I get on and the microphone and just start telling it. So, but I
Yeah,
mean,
I know. I
you
just
know,
I just thinking of because there's so many tools now that
yeah,
will allow you to do this, that I mean, this is really a, kind of a new, and you can do it before, right? But now it's so easy. I mean,
yeah,
literally you could, well, if you're in certain programs, it does it on the fly.
hmm,
But once you get done, you just feed it in, boom, you got a transcript. I've
yeah,
actually been putting transcripts on all the posts because
hmm,
here lately, just because I can, number
yeah,
one. And then the other thing is because the internet is still a very text based
yes,
beast.
oh yeah,
And
yeah,
so by doing that, you're, increasing your chances of being indexed because you've got all these nice
yeah.
words in it.
You're right,
Um,
and so that's one of the reasons that I love Substack. Why I went to Substack is because they actually do like automatically generated transcript for your
mhm,
podcast that people can read and look at.
mhm,
And Substack is like there's a lot of backlash right now that people in the, I don't want to call it the Substack community, but like people on that platform are getting really mad at Substack right now because they're going more toward video.
right.
They've got like a Reels button that they recently introduced, so they're just
Mhm,
adopting and stealing everything that. These are the reasons why I like leave Instagram, right?
right.
Why I'm not on, because it's like I want to actually be able to go on there and I want to have them push stuff on me that I can read.
Right.
Sit there in a quiet room and not just be overwhelmed by like sudden loud sounds coming at me from my phone. Um, you know, but
Yeah, but well, everybody, that's the problem, is this
mhm,
mimicry, right?
mhm,
So
yeah, yeah,
everybody, whenever something becomes, popular, then all of the majors are like, well, we got to mimic that on our platform.
yeah,
And nobody's really taking kind of the road less traveled and saying, okay, we're specializing in this,
I know.
and then actually doing that.
Yeah, yeah,
So it's because I mean, even podcasts aren't podcasts anymore; they're vidcasts or whatever you want to call them.
right.
We're doing it right now. We have video going, and
No,
so it
yeah,
used to be just an audio thing,
right.
but
I'm a
I don't
yeah.
know.
I'm a big believer in giving an audience for anything more than one way to receive, what you're putting out there.
Hmm.
Um, that's why it's like when I was telling you that, when I got my first iPod, I waited and until I had enough money to get the video iPod
Hmm.
because I really wanted to watch the Ricky Gervais podcast. That was a big deal at the time.
Right, right,
And that was video and audio as well. And it was like I loved that idea that like you could listen to audio if you wanted to, but they've also got like that extra video component. And
right.
that's why it's like on Spotify, I like upload my video show every week because I sort of saw what like people like Bill Maher were doing with their podcasts where it's like, you could listen to it. Or
Hmm.
it was so weird because I was listening to his show one day and then I looked on my Spotify feed and there was like there was video. I didn't know
Right. Yeah.
that. So it was so interesting to me. But yeah, I mean, you're right. It's like the way that like the internet has caught up. It's like it's now like, yeah, between like the ability to like do AI transcripts of your show, people can read your show
Hmm.
without you having to do any extra work. They can watch your show, they can listen to your show. It's everything that like we we wanted it to be, right? Like
Hmm.
again, I know that you've been doing this much longer than me and you've got a few more years on me, but I just remember so well the dream of like what the internet was, say like
Mm-hmm.
1994, 95.
Right. Yeah.
And it's everything that we've wanted it to be has come true, but there's also obviously like a lot of dark things that we had to like that we have to take in order for it to be like this.
True.
So,
True.
there's a few dark things about the internet, I guess we could say, you know. So,
Well, more than a few, unfortunately.
no,
The
I
but
know.
you know, it's interesting, and you know, the funny thing is, you talk about, you know, kind of the infancy, and you know, the interesting thing about the internet, it was going to be the clarifier, right?
Hmm.
So anyone could find out anything at any time, and so it was going to clarify what you're thinking. So you're going to look and you're going to see an answer. And what it's turned out to be is exactly the opposite,
Yeah.
because you can go and you can get 100 different answers, and then people are constantly fighting to be the answer.
Right.
And marketing, between marketing and gaming the system and everything else, it really, it's not the great clarifier of things.
Yeah.
It's actually the opposite. It just, I'm trying to think
Yeah.
of what would the word, I would say modifier, but what would the word be that's more appropriate? Um,
The I I don't know the oh, gosh, I'm trying to think. Um,
that's
it's like
okay. You don't have to come up with
I'm
my
gonna
words
call it
for me.
the plinkoing of
Yeah, the plinkoing. Yeah, the
you take
plinko.
one little piece of knowledge, right there, and then you like just kind of drop it into a tray, and it may go this way, it may go that way.
But
Um,
but
yeah,
the reality is AI is now saying, "Oh no, wait, we're going to be the great clarifier."
yeah, yeah.
And we're playing this game again, and the reality is that they won't.
No, no.
And it's we get, you know, do you remember there's the monorail show for The Simpsons? I always find that hilarious
Oh
because, you
God,
know,
yeah. One of the great
and
episodes of
we're getting
television.
sold the monorail again and again and again in these things. So from you know, early search engines to now early AI,
Yeah,
we're getting resold the same monorail that goes nowhere.
right. It's just one of these things. It's like, and I that you know, it's something that just cannot be put back in the box. And I've never ever wanted something to be put back in the box more than AI, because again, like as a teacher, you get your plate is already full trying to teach students about like,
Right.
composition, but now you've got this extra added headache on top of AI that is now completely corrupting research and
Mm-hmm.
the way that students actually receive information. And it's you know I am just 100% like constantly just like I use AI, but I also know like like that it's a tool, that it's the same
Mm-hmm.
way that we were taught to use, search engines, years
Right.
ago.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a tool, and you have to be careful with that tool, and know exactly what the limitations of it are, and how it can backfire on you if you don't know how to use it. But like if you talk about like the students that I teach right now who have now been using AI for most of like the lives that they've had, where they've been asked to write papers and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
This is like what they know, and they don't see ethical issues with it at all. They don't see the idea that like they're missing out on the complete critical thinking process work of it. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and when you also see the fact that like, teachers are now using it as well, like the people that I work with, and some
Mm-hmm.
teachers who are much older than me and have been doing it for much longer are using AI to actually generate feedback from their students. So they're literally not even reading the work that
Right.
they're assigning students.
Right.
Their students are actually turning in work, they're putting it into an AI, and then asking that AI to grade it based on the rubric that they also asked AI to create for them. Is
Mm-hmm.
really messed up to me. It just is like completely, it's like it makes me feel like we're all just like that person who's like that standing behind the counter at like a Circle K watching you scan your
Right.
items,
Yeah.
into the computer, just put them down on the tray, and then you pay for it. And
Mhm.
like, I had this experience yesterday. Somebody at a Circle K was like working there and ostensibly getting paid to literally stand there and watch me do their job. And it was so
Right.
weird to me, because it's like, this is so indicative of like where society is going right now, is that we're literally taking the human element out of the most important jobs, you know?
Yeah, that's the funny. The fun
Yeah.
as you were
Mm.
talking about this, it just shot through my head. I'm like, we're all through pop culture, we're all assuming that the Terminator is going to come take away
I'm not
all of the
worried about
humans, right?
Terminator.
It's no,
Yeah.
they're taking it away, but they're just in basically they're just making us redundant, so we just stand around.
Yeah, that's exactly the case, is the fact that, like, obviously, yeah, the Terminator is like a very overused cliche to describe the
Hmm.
AI revolution, but
Right?
it's an incorrect thing, because like that movie assumes that we're going to fight back, and we're not at all. I
No.
mean, we are welcoming AI with like open arms, and just totally like let it come in. And I just find it so fascinating. Like, I actually had a job interview yesterday. I was like, right now, it's like my contract with teaching is about to end for the semester. So I've been
Hmm.
looking for jobs, and I had a job interview yesterday for a position with this local parks commission. I was like, applying for development to help them with development. And the person who was interviewing me asked me point blank, like about 25 minutes or so into the interview, she looked at me the same way that I look at students when I have to ask them the same question. She like kind
Hmm.
of like accusatory a little bit. She said, like, I have to ask you, did you write your resume with AI?
Hmm.
And the question just kind of like took me aback, because she's looking at a resume where it's like, I have about 15 years of not only teaching experience, but also like writing grants and developing programs and things like that. And so it's like my qualifications are right in front of her, that I am a writer, and that I have been writing a long time before AI was around.
Hmm.
And she's looking at a resume that I don't know why she would ask me if I wrote it with AI. It just was, but it's interesting. But I also, I should have asked her, like, why do you ask? Like, are there any red flags?
Right.
Number one, I didn't write it with AI. I used a template on Microsoft Word. I don't know. She was sort of, that was what she was thinking about, is
Uh-huh.
that it was like laid out with a template. But the thing about it is like, even if I did write it with AI, I was trying to ask myself, like, would that be ethical? And I think it is. It is
Yeah.
totally ethical to use AI to write something like a resume, because a resume is not indicative of your writing experience. It's indicative of
No,
your
it's
work
not.
experience.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
just you're just formatting what
Yeah.
you've done. Yeah.
But it's that kind of comes back to my whole point, though, about just wanting to put AI back in the box until we can kind of shake it a little bit and figure out what it's about. Because like, there are no cut and dry ethics in any medium right now where we can use
Mhm.
AI. There's no cut and dry ethics in teaching, in writing grants, in the way that it's used in offices all over the country or the world. Everybody has their different opinion about like what is ethical when it comes to AI.
Right.
And that's a huge issue right now, because like, I personally believe that like teachers should be heartily embracing AI when they're working with students,
Hmm.
because we're sending students out into a world where AI is being used in every single space you can imagine.
Yeah.
So it's like, it would be unethical to like tell them that it's wrong to always use AI. So it's like, like, I don't allow them to use it in writing their papers, but I'm like, if you're doing research, that's totally fine. Just make sure that you're actually following the links that like the AI overview on Google gives you, and like actually
Mhm.
seeing if that information is correct. So it's like, again, trying to teach them to use it as a tool that I instinctively know that it is, because I've been, writing professionally in different capacities now for 15 years.
Mhm.
So it's like, I knew how to do all this stuff before AI came along, but like, students now don't, and really lazy people don't care. So, right. So,
Right. Well, that's interesting.
mm, yeah.
That's an interesting thought about the ethics of it all,
Mhm.
because, I mean, we could get to the point where the AI writes the grants, the AI reviews the grants, and
Yeah.
then you, as the person, receive the grant.
Right.
right? So, but then what happens? You know what I mean?
Well, you implement it, but like, again, nobody, that was the interesting thing that she was asking me about that. And I feel like, if I get asked back for a second interview, I would talk to her about this because I've been out of grant writing for a while now, and
Mhm.
I'm interested to know how much of it is now done, because I have to imagine, because grant writing already is about 60% taking boilerplate language from
Right?
other
Yeah.
grants,
Yeah.
and then just like adding in your own content specific language.
Mhm.
Like I have to imagine now that the grant writing space is almost completely AI. And not only that, but just like, yeah, you're right, the reviewing of grants, it's like the same way that like being on LinkedIn has shown me that the entire job marketplace right now is run by AI. Because you'll apply to a job, you feel like you're a perfectly good candidate for it, and then like that you're getting screened by AI, especially if it's like
Mhm.
a national company or something.
Right. Yeah.
And then they'll send you like an AI response back that said that you didn't meet their recruiting standards. It's like,
Right.
what human being talks like that?
Right. That's right.
But yeah, I mean, it's like you almost have to go through several rounds now before you get, it's like a idol or something. You have to go through several rounds before a human being even gets to you.
Yeah, or yeah, even takes the time.
Yeah,
Yeah. I
yeah,
mean, it's
yeah,
the funny thing is it was, again, it was supposed to be, one of these things that was the great leveler, and it became it's worse. You have to be in the organization to get any traction on anything
right,
that you might want, because anybody from the outside is going to be so heavily screened that it's going to be really, unless you're some kind of stellar applicant, you're never going to get through all the hurdles very easily,
right,
unless you have an inside track.
yeah,
And that's not the way it was supposed to be. The idea was it was supposed to level the playing field so that people would
right,
equally have a chance, and it's
right,
just gotten worse and worse.
yeah,
It's funny how all these things, all the grandiose notions of all this have really just fallen. I
hmm
mean,
yeah,
just us talking tonight about it has really got me ticking on this with in my head, because it's like, yeah, I mean, it was very Pollyanna to think that any of this would actually come to be.
hmm
I mean, social media is marketing. I don't
yeah,
know why they just don't call it that. I mean, yes,
yeah,
there's people who are social,
hmm
but the vast majority is marketing for whatever you're trying to market,
yeah,
or they're wholly created, entities that are not a person,
hmm
and
yeah.
it's ridiculous.
I'm getting to the point where I'm like completely leaving Meta, because I don't even know why I have it anymore. I don't even know why I have a Facebook or Instagram anymore. Obviously to watch like reels on static radio, um
you,
but
I put them other places, so.
it is this point where it completely depresses me to be on these platforms, because like I saw Facebook grow from like a little seedling,
Mhm.
like I was in like a sophomore in college, when Facebook came to my university, like, and you could only get one if you had like a university email, college email
Mhm.
address.
Yeah.
And I got on it for the same reason that like it was invented, which is to like sort of see if that, like, this girl in my writing class had a boyfriend. And so like, you got on there. I mean, it seems so innocent at the time. I know it's like now it's cyber stalking, but nobody
Right.
cares that it's stalking. But it was such a cool place, because like everybody that you knew was on there, and you could connect with like all these other people, and there was no marketing involved. There was absolutely no like
Mhm.
go on there to promote yourself and things like that. It just was simply to connect with people and to kind of, like Justin Timberlake says in the movie that was made about Facebook, just like relive the party, go
Mhm.
someplace and then spend the next day connecting and communicating with like the people that, and just kind of keeping the conversation going. And it was a lot
Mhm.
of fun. And then I remember like the specific day it was announced that they were letting high school kids get on
Right.
it. And now it's a text message from my mother-in-law every other day telling me to go onto Facebook and see the post that she made. You know? And it's like, that's the only reason I would still be on it, is just to connect with like and just to let my mother, like check in on my mother-in-law and my mom and everything. But
right. Yeah. I mean, that's what
then it's like I can
happens.
do that on text message. So it's like there's no point really to be on it anymore. And again, I've had like, I've used it for like to promote the show for years, but it just doesn't really do anything for me. It makes me honestly like sick in the stomach whenever I'm putting a show together, and I'm like, now I got to go to Facebook and do that, and all that. So, like I don't even want to like, kind of grow any following over there anymore. It's just because it's not just the fact that like obviously there's a lot of political stuff, like things that I'm irritated right now about the people who run these companies, but there's been so much just come out in over the years about just how much they are like, how much they spy on us and how much they think of us as just like, like little matrix pods to like mine and then sell. And not only that, but there's just been so much, just like after reading Jonathan Haidt's book, The Anxious Generation, about just like how these companies are just like so obsessed with like getting kids in and hooked as early as they possibly can without regard for like CAPA or federal regulations or anything like that. Like the
It
online
sounds like
privacy,
big tobacco.
It is. No, that's I mean, and he's not the first one. I don't know if the Jonathan Haidt, the social psychologist, who wrote these two books together, The Coddling of the American Mind and The Anxious Generation, which are just all about like how like, we have the data to support, like in 2010, as soon as Apple invented that iPhone 4 with the front facing camera, that's when everything started to go downhill for Gen Z.
Right.
And again, it's like these are the students that I'm teaching now, and that genuinely, like, I will get emails from them every single day that they can't come to class because they're suffering mental health issues.
Right.
And
Right.
and it's just like this term mental health is something that has just become such a tool that is preventable, that we can easily prevent it. Like,
Oh, sure. You
just
don't have to be in the know of all this crap.
yeah, exactly. And the whatever they say, it's like, mental health issues are now very, very self-diagnosed among teenagers because adults are constantly using that term. So it's like the adults are like, it's sort of like, the male teacher never could like, accuse like a female teacher of like, or a female student of like leaving the class, because it's like, you're not really on your cycle right now. Now it's like, teachers can't call into question when a student says that she or he is having a mental health crisis.
Right.
Like we're not allowed to do that. So it's like students, and I saw this when I was teaching high school, totally know now that like adults cannot question their mental health. And so
they're gaming the system.
they use that against you all the time.
Yeah.
But again, it's like, it is totally legitimate. They wouldn't have that excuse to fall back on if they weren't genuinely, I think, at some level going through some kind of like a mental health anxiety about the way that they look, about the fear of missing out, that they see all their friends on Instagram doing something together and then they're not with them. But
well,
yeah, like what I was saying is that like just getting off of these big companies like Meta and everything, it's like it just feels like almost that we know so much about it now that it just almost feels like it's just like, it makes me feel icky to like give these companies any data about me or any bit of my time. So
right.
Yeah.
But don't you think, I mean, is there a way to have, because the communicate, I mean, we're communicating, right? The chances that you and I, let's be honest, would have ever met in the regular world, the meat world, whatever you want to call it, is slim to none. And yet
Yeah.
you and I have had good conversations here on Exit Ramp,
Mhm.
on other things, and then listening to other things,
Yeah.
that other people have produced and so forth,
Mhm.
have all happened. Is there a way for the internet to be that without all of this other baggage and ridiculousness and constant marketing?
What I find is fascinating is that yeah, of course it can be. And I think, like, again, I'm not like shilling for Substack or anything, but what's so interesting to me is that I'll go onto Reddit and people have a completely different experience on Substack than I do. They'll talk about finding hate rhetoric and Nazi Substacks and
Mhm.
things like that. And it's like the algorithm over there, it's almost like they have learned everything from what Facebook and Instagram and TikTok have done wrong,
Mhm.
and they've adjusted it to do everything not like them. And I think, like, and as I said, like, there's been a lot of controversy about like the sliding that Substack is doing lately into kind of, just being more like those platforms. But
Right.
I just think, like, it's really going to come down to more and more like Silicon Valley companies or whoever, like, just uh creating, the individual websites that will ultimately, like, people will go on and use the way that everybody kind of goes on and automatically uses Google. We need
Mhm.
to kind of like shift that to like new companies coming over and taking over for the old companies,
Mhm.
and these companies operating on like just being genuinely very ethical people. And I know that that's like really hard to find right now, is people starting up companies that have ethics about them and are more interested in that, or like
Well,
marrying ethics and money, but
but they all starve. I mean, if you look
yeah.
at
Hmm.
the Internet Archive, they starve. If you look
Yeah,
at
I know.
Wikipedia, it starves.
I know.
And unfortunately, not that those are. I think those are good examples. They're not the Electronic Frontier Foundation, right,
Hmm.
is not rolling in cash.
Yeah.
And then if you have the government involved in it at all, then it's control of the media. It's control of the medium.
Right.
So you can't have that. So the weird thing is we're kind of stuck in a way.
Yeah.
I mean, what happened to Excite? That was my
Yeah.
search engine of choice way back in the day.
Well, I think, like, it is going to come down to, like, we can't rely on, yeah, like private interest or the government to do it anymore. And I think what it's just
Mhm.
going to come down to is, like I said on Substack, you've just got to be really conscious of like the fact that, like, whatever you look at, the algorithm is going to log it, and it's going to like hold up a mirror to your soul, you know. And that's what I was telling, that's what I was like responding to somebody who wrote a piece on this the other day, about how Substack is like a completely different experience for people, where
Mhm.
it's like on TikTok and Instagram and Facebook, like you can click on something and you're going to get fed, whatever the person who created that content is
Mhm.
into. So, you
Right,
know,
right.
you're like walking into their house and you're going to leave with like their stink on you. But,
Mhm.
like with Substack, it's like only you. So it's like these people who are getting like these bona fide, like this racism just like thrown at them on
Mhm.
Substack. It's because they clicked on something, they engaged with a conversation, they did this. And it's like that's what it ultimately is that it's a very specific algorithm, what I've noticed, that holds up
Mhm.
a mirror to you and be like, well, this is what you're interested in. So it's like, you
Right.
got to tell us that you're not interested in it.
Yeah, but half the
So
time I accidentally click on the stupid Timu ad, and then now I get a little mini bulldozer. I don't want a mini
well,
bulldozer. I
again,
don't know.
that's another reason why Substack is so great. And it's just because, and again, this is not a paid endorsement at all. It's just, this is where I've been, and I've never ever been addicted. I wouldn't say I'm addicted to Substack, but I've never been so heavily involved on any kind of social media platform until Substack, because you go there and it is completely ad free. There's no ads on it. And I mean, it's all user generated content that you're seeing. It like, I've never had the site like crash on me or stall on me or like send me to like something else. It really is just like kind of a cool platform. But again, like you say, like stuff like that seems only interested in the content that it wants to give you, they do starve. And I think, like, that company is starving a bit right now. They're really trying to figure out like what they are trying to be that will hold true to the principles that they founded it with, while still being able to like generate income and money,
Right.
So
Exactly.
yeah,
And it's hard. And, you would think, and this is one of those debates that's been going on forever, micropayments, right? So let's say you read a Substack, you pay a penny.
yeah,
So if you have enough of those, then it can easily sustain something, but it's a hassle.
yeah,
But at this point, I think we're past that hassle. We just somebody has to implement it and make it stick, right? So maybe it's just a nickel. I don't know, whatever it
yeah,
is, right?
yeah,
And then with all that going through, then that would help sustain it. But the problem is that the funny thing is us as consumers, we don't want to pay a nickel. Why am I going to pay a nickel? But
yeah,
I'll pay $100 a year.
yeah,
You know what I
yeah.
mean? Or I'll
I
pay
think that,
$50 a month.
yeah, I think that that's the thing, is that's what that website really needs to figure out, is because they're and the only note that I've posted on Substack, and this is the only time I've ever gone semi-viral in my entire 20-year history with social media, is I posted a note on there that just said, like, I'm reading so much great stuff on here of you, but if you send me what you have for free, I'll read it, and that got like all of this traction. And I ended up just getting like a ton of like, meeting a ton of people on there. And like, this was about 2 months ago that I posted that note, and I'm still like reading people every day, the stuff that they write. Is because the frustrating thing about Substack is that like every single person on there has a separate thing that you have to pay for.
Right.
And obviously, Pete, like, I don't put anything on there for free, or I mean, I don't charge anybody anything.
Right.
But a lot of people do sort of think about it as like, if I'm going to put this much work into writing something, I would like to ask people to pay for
Yeah.
it.
If I'm gonna click on that button on Chat
Yeah,
GPT and have it write it for me, I got to get paid.
exactly. I know. Yeah, but like, that's what I think Substack should figure out. And there's a lot of people who are writing about this. It's very like hotly debated right now, is that like, what is this thing? Like, should we just do microtransactions? Like, if I give Substack $100 a year, and I tell Substack, it's like, okay, I'm giving you $100 a year. I subscribe to 25 people, take that $100 and divvy it up to them once a month,
Right.
like, I want Substack to be able to do something like that, because that would allow me to like support them, while, the people that I truly believe are worthy of supporting. And it also would cut down on people just subscribing to each other just to get subscribes
Right.
back.
Just to move the number up. Right.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because like that's a big pain in the ass that like is on all social media right now that Substack can easily solve. But again, it doesn't make sense for them as a company, because it's like they are supporting the creators, but that doesn't really do a whole lot for the platform itself.
Right.
It's sort of, so like, I understand all of that. It's, that's the issue right now, is like, how do you get that platform to, to make money while being able to hold true to its principles. So
Yeah.
but it's been interesting to watch the drama unfold, honestly, of just like, because I was on Substack. I've been on it now for 2 years. So it's like, I discovered it very early on, I would say. And it's been interesting to just kind of see it evolve with all these new features and everything. It really does remind me of like just seeing Facebook slowly go down the toilet.
Right.
It's interesting to see Substack sort of like at the same exact like critical juncture, where does it just go the way of like all these other soulless corporations, or does it actually try to do something important here?
Well, hopefully it doesn't get bought out by Meta.
oh god, I don't even want to imagine that scenario. I don't know. I don't think Mark Zuckerberg would see anything valuable in it. He's like, wait, you're
Well,
a social
no,
media.
it's eliminating competition,
Well, yeah,
absorbing
you're
users.
yeah. No, you're
It's all
exactly right.
worthwhile. I
You're exactly
mean,
right. That would be such a nightmare.
yeah,
Um, or just another company that comes along and replaces it. Like Substack has basically replaced Medium, which is I had never
right.
heard of Medium. I had no idea
Yeah.
what that was, So before they
That's
came along.
interesting. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
I
yeah.
guess here's the things we have to work on
Mhm.
here, Mike. So we have to figure out a way to.
Yeah,
This is all about solving the problems of the
yeah,
world. I don't
yeah,
know.
yeah, yeah.
We have to figure out how to have some type of exchange to keep the lights on for the provider, and also to provide the people who are making the content with some incentive to keep making content.
Yeah.
And I mean, the weird thing is, it's like, you know um how can we, you know they always turn to advertisers.
Mhm.
That's the answer typically. And a lot of things don't want to turn to advertise. I remember, and this goes way back again. Leo Laporte, who was early into podcasting, who
Mhm.
was a technology writer and the technology person. When he started doing his stuff, he's like, "We're not going to take advertising. You're going to just send me some money." Essentially, it was before Patreon and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And he did that model for a while, and it didn't work.
Yeah.
I mean, people did send him money, but not in the quantity that was needed to grow the network. And so then he did a hybrid, and then now it's, basically advertising. So, but Patreon, I think, doesn't work. I mean, I think
Mhm.
Patreon maybe works enough for itself, but it doesn't really work. I mean,
Yeah.
you have people who do they get a Patreon, and then no one ever donates to them, and then
Yeah.
they've just given over their information. So now Patreon is selling their information.
Yeah.
um it-
Patreon also fundamentally alters like your plan for what you want to do,
mhm.
because in order to have a Patreon, you're already doing something that you want people to support, but then
Right.
you have to do extra stuff on top of that to
Right.
give the
That's
people who
right. You got to
subscribe
work
to
for
you.
Patreon then. Yeah.
So that's like I had a friend who was doing a comic, and he was doing it every single week for several years,
Hmm.
and he got on Patreon and he doesn't do the comic anymore. And a lot of stuff, there were a lot of other factors involved in that, but one of the like in his life that went into that decision. But one of those things I have to think is because of this extra pressure to do like videos every week of like showing people how you draw the comic and everything. And so it sort of fundamentally altered like his whole goal of like creating, and it did turn it into a business. And um which is fine. Like I think like I don't necessarily like agree. Like I know like Frank Nora will sometimes say that like just taking something that you love and turning it into a business is like the best way to kill it. Like, I
Right.
don't think that that's
Yes.
possible at all. I don't think any business would exist if that were the case,
Right.
but it is absolutely true that if you want to turn what you do into a business, don't adopt a model that forces you to instantly change, what you're doing.
Mhm.
And
Right.
That's what Patreon does. And,
Mhm.
that's why it's like the only time in the history of anything that I've done where I've asked people to pay money for something that I've done was a few weeks ago. I wrote an article and I put a lot of time into it. It took me like 2 weeks to write it, and I put it up
Mhm.
on my Substack. And I went and created a really quick account with Buy Me a Coffee, because I
Oh,
was
right.
like,
Mhm.
I did like a lot of work on this, like, and it was like I had to like miss making money, like going out and making money to like sit home and finish this thing,
Mhm.
because it was a current event thing about what was going on with the Department of Education. And I was
Right.
like, if I publish this in 2 days, it's not going to be relevant anymore. So it's like, I need to
Mhm.
stay home this week and finish this. So it's like that's the only time I've ever done that. I made it like as little as possible. It's like, I think the lowest amount you can do $2 for a cup of coffee. So
Right.
so I went on and did that and everything. And so it's like, I got a little bit of support, which was kind of nice. It was kind of cool to actually get paid for something specific that you did. That was sort of neat. neat. And it didn't
We
make
need
up all the money I lost writing it, but it was okay. You
we need
know,
to make a new version called "Buy Me a K Cup."
yeah, I know exactly. But that's like the model that I enjoyed, though. That's the model I think is important, is to make something that you're already going to be doing. You're already doing it, right?
Mhm.
And you make some kind of a model that allows people to pay you for that one specific thing and nothing
Mhm.
else. And if you want to get paid again, then make something else, and don't just like create this like anxiety on yourself to create all this extra stuff and completely fundamentally alter your plan in writing something, or doing a podcast or whatever. So yeah. So
Words to live by.
yeah.
Now
So
I feel bad if I put the Substack back up on the thing. I feel like I'm shilling.
no, you're not. No. Don't chill. No, it's like, again, yeah, we need to get
See,
away.
look. Oh,
There
look,
it is.
Bob's shilling for Mike's
No,
bonfire.
no. I think like we really need to get I had a lot of anxiety about it for years, but I think we need to kind of get away from the point where it's like we're ashamed to like promote ourselves and what we do, or we're ashamed to like promote these companies that actually are doing a great job in the current moment. Like I think like we have so much tech anxiety that's been birthed out of like how these companies have just like taken such advantage of deregulation to completely
Right.
distort our world and the way we receive information. It's like, if there's a tech company out there that's doing good things, and like we need to, by God, embrace it and promote it and tell people about it, so
Well, I'm waiting for AI to make us all redundant so that we can just kind of hang out and do things for free, and then we don't have to worry about any of it. We just kind of put it out there for free, and whatever
isn't that what
happens
Elon
happens.
Musk wants? Isn't that his like ultimate plan, like his weird vision for, he wants us to just like hang around all day long and just like create art and not have to worry about work and things like that?
Sounds good. That sounds like a good bit. As long as I can, eat and stuff, I'm fine with that.
I
You
think so,
know,
but I also think about all the great art that has come in this world from like, just working a shitty job, and and things like that. Like, I mean, I just think
you
like
can't
I
take the suffering out of art. Is that what you're telling me?
no, you can't. You absolutely can't. I mean, tell me one happy person who's ever written a novel. I mean, it's like you even see like these people, like these big literary, giants of like the last 25 years, like Bret Easton Ellis, or David Foster Wallace, or
Mhm.
Jonathan Latham, and you see these like literary giants and who grew up in privilege and kind of grew up with everything handed to them, and they're
Mhm.
freaking miserable, in interviews. They're not happy people. It's like,
Right.
it's like you have to, yeah, I absolutely 100% believe that you cannot have any kind of really good art that's worth consuming if it wasn't made by a miserable person.
There you go.
you know
Maybe
so
maybe we can come up with a new currency that's the misery,
yeah,
and then everybody can just share their misery
yeah.
to
Well,
help each artist.
if I were to ask you, what, like, thinking about movies, what do you think the best decade for movies was for film? What do you think?
That's a tough question. The best
Yeah,
decade for movies. Well, I mean, for me, unfortunately, but that I think has to do with when I really got into movies would be like the late 70s and then the early 80s.
yeah.
So
So for me, it's like no question at all. It's the 1970s. And it's not
yeah.
because like I was not alive in the 1970s, and like, but, I, when I think back like on my favorite movies of all time, like The French Connection, Jaws,
Mhm.
all that jazz, like these are movies that were made during like the darkest, one of the darkest decades in American history.
True. Yeah.
The only decade that was really darker was like the 1930s, and
Right.
there were some
Yeah.
pretty damn good movies during that time. So it's like,
Mhm.
it's like things had to be bad in order for like great, and I hate that that's the case, but it's sort of, it sort of is, you know. So
Takes some pressure to make a diamond, they say. So.
yeah, sure. I mean, yeah, you could definitely say that. So
well, Mike, we got to do this again.
yeah,
Just
definitely.
gonna let's wallow in our misery again another time.
I feel like,
we will call this misery part 1, and then we'll
yeah,
come up with another part 2.
I'm fine. I mean, you know,
The
I
sequel,
see
yeah.
that's the problem right now is that I'm too happy. I'm too happy. I need to, like, you know, um, I need to, you know, get miserable again.
Well,
I don't
wait,
know.
don't go outside. You've got 4 flat tires.
Oh yeah, well that'll do it right there. Yeah,
Yeah.
I know. That just
Well,
means I get
thanks,
to stay
Mike, for
home.
talking to me. I appreciate
I
it.
definitely, man. I'm looking
And
forward to it.
go read some of Mike's stuff at the Bonfire. And
Bye.
it's not anything bad. It's good.
Yeah, no,
You
it's
hang
no.
out, you hang out, you know, get something to drink, and it's all good.
It's not offensive at all.
Till next time, folks. Hang on for a
All right.
second, Mike.
Okay. Was that an actual